To get rich is glorious. With those words, China's former leader Deng Xiaoping kick-started an economic miracle that in 25 years took the country from poverty to modernity, the Olympics, and the brink of superpower status. But there were also costs, galloping inflation, the world's worst pollution problems, and a social fabric that is showing the strain. I'm Taimur Nabili, and on this edition of 101 East, we ask, what is the future for China after the Olympics? China's industrial revolution has brought the country unparalleled prosperity and provided the world with a flood of consumer product. But it's also filled the skies with pollution at a time when the environment has become a major global priority. Chantao Cho reports now on how Beijing is trying to balance the need for economic growth with the desire to go green, all the while coming under political pressure from inside and outside.
Tai Chi Chuan, an ancient Chinese martial art with an emphasis on balance between power and control. It's a balance the communist country is trying to achieve as well. Three decades of economic reform powered China to become the world's second largest economy after the United States. Today, the government may be losing control of the economic beast it has created. In particular, a rapidly rising currency.
Many manufacturing businesses are closing their doors, and RMB appreciation has made exports to overseas market more difficult for these manufacturing businesses. Also, energy prices are going up, and raw material prices are going up. Labor costs are going up. At the same time, inflation is rising, where the costs are going up. Consumer products prices are also going up. So the Chinese government, I believe, is caught in a dilemma, not knowing what to do exactly.
This helmet factory boasts one of the larger operations in China's southern Guangdong province, exporting to the European and American markets. To stay afloat, it was recently forced to retrench nearly a third of its 5,000 workers.
Most of the people here in this area, we don't talk about profit. We talk about survival. The renminbi appreciation very fast in the past few months. 24% increase. How can we make up 24% of the profit in one product? It's impossible.
It's not just Philip Cheng's company that's suffering. Guangdong is home to tens of thousands of factories like it, churning out a quarter of China's exports and employing 17 million migrant workers from other provinces. This year, Guangdong revoked tax rebates for exporters and adopted new labor laws to improve workers' wages. It means only one thing to Philip Cheng.
I feel sorry. Factory of the world is no longer here. I don't think it will be here in the future, because we cannot produce anything cheap.
Cheap is no longer attractive for China's leaders. They want to see low-end manufacturing here replaced by higher value projects. But foreign investors will still chase the best deal. Singaporean businessman Sim Che Hui chose a factory near Shanghai rather than Guangdong because production costs are lower. But it presented a different set of problems.
These factories have less experience in managing their quality. You must think like a factory owner. You must think like you own the factory. So you go down there, you talk to the boss, all the way down to the people who are actually touching your products, to impress on them that quality matters.
Without a mature legal environment for businesses, contracts drawn up to ensure quality control provide limited protection.
Well, the rule of law is you must know the boss well. Yeah, contract is one thing, but you have to breathe secondhand smoke. You have to stay out late nights to build up some kind of rapport with all these factory owners.
In this country, people do businesses not on the basis of the rule of law, but on the basis of personal connections. I think the challenge is for them to further develop the right economic institutions, what we might call as market-supporting economic institutions, rather than depending on the old way of doing business.
While business dealings may need to depart from the old ways, production methods face even greater pressure to do so. Most of Guangdong's exports involve low-tech, labor-intensive manufacturing industries that often pollute the water, the land and the air. Now typically, many countries deal with environmental problems when they're rich, but such is the pace of China's urban and industrial growth that it has to do it now.
Other countries' mistakes provide a lesson for China. The world has many examples of poor environmental management. If we still commit such mistakes, it's even more unforgivable.
In the capital Beijing, the smog in a city was a talking point leading up to the Olympic Games. To stem pollution, the government ordered nearby factories to temporarily stop operations. It also imposed strict restrictions on the use of private cars. But urban planners do not see these as long-term solutions.
From the start, what we have done is to study how much pressure our environment and natural resources can handle. We will base our scale and methods of city development on that. This is how we balance industrial growth and environmental protection.
China has to find that balance, or power will be nothing when economic and environmental problems spiral out of control.
Joining me for today's discussion, coming from the Dongyue Temple in central Beijing, are Jin Chanrong, who's Professor of International Relations at Renmin University. Zhang Lijia is an author and journalist, and Professor Stephen Dong is the director of the Global Journalism Institute at the Tsinghua University here in Beijing. Thank you all for being with us today.
Pleasure.
It's an interesting time for China, everybody knows that. Everybody's talking about that. In an international context, let me begin with you. Is everybody talking about the right things?
Depends on to whom you talk with. Right? Today's world composed of 6.7 billion population, but among them there is a very special and unique group of people. That's the group of people so-called Western community, right?
And they certainly seem to dominate the conversation.
Yeah. They account for about less than 15%. That's something close to 1 billion, less than 15%. But unfortunately, they dominate the media. Over 80% of the voices came out from that community. And they equal themselves to international community.
Right.
That's wrong. That's not a fact.
Zhang Lijia, the Western media does seem to equate itself to the global voice, as it were. Is what they're saying fair?
I would say yes. I think often you read very negative stories, probably too negative in some ways, but I also feel very important that
so Amnesty International's latest report criticizing China for failing to open up sufficiently was fair in your mind?
I think it's fair, yes. I have spoken to petitioners suffering huge amount of injustice. I don't know what they said is all true, but I think for me, one of the main challenges the government is facing now is widespread discontentment and social injustice and the lack of channels for these people to express their grief and injustice.
Stephen Dong, discontentment, social injustice, that's
right.
what everyone's talking about.
I think it is very, very natural that we have some critics, and also some people say China is doing a great job because the media is always going to challenge in many ways. Even Chinese media, we are also not only covering positive news, but also negative news as well. So this is show you the Chinese Transparent Governance Act, which become active from the first day of May, is working.
Is the fact that the Western media is putting a value system on the way China's development is going a fair representation to you?
China, I think, is something different from ordinary nation state. China is a civilization. China is a continent. As for the population, we have close to 1.4 billion population, twice as the whole European continent, right? So China is too complicated. You cannot understand China just by simply relying on the traditional nation-state approach. Right? So take a more complicated approach to when you look at China. Be humble. Don't jump to the conclusion too swiftly. Right?
And jumping to conclusions really is what's going on in the context of a civilization that spans millennia. To expect in the past 30 years of economic development to utterly usurp that and impose a Western value system must surely be a little bit ambitious.
I think it's very important to understand where China was coming from and also give China credits for what it achieved. And the Chinese authority lifted more people out of poverty in just, in such a short period. That's just really, really incredible, remarkable achievement in the human history. But on that hand, that it's not right to not try to silence the criticism.
And that's the point. Incredible, remarkable development in the past 25 years, and yet plenty of criticism. So let me put the question to you. Is the development quick enough? And is the criticism fair in that time frame?
Right. I mean, development in China means fighting with all kinds of problems. And if you read some of our government paper and also Chinese people's opinions on the internet, and we are changing from caring lots of things about the speed now into caring about the quality. So talking about how quickly we are changing the country is not anymore the #1 priority topic for Chinese media and Chinese people.
Okay, let's pause there for a minute. We'll come back and dig a little bit more deeply into some of these specific issues.
Yeah.
We'll take a short break here on 101 East. Do stay with us.